Hello, and welcome to another Cloud Podcast, a podcast designed to bring you stories from the smartest minds in IT, operations, and business, and learn how they're using cloud technology to improve business and the customer experience. All right. Well, hey, we have another Cloud Podcast bringing it to you today with Darren Prine. We have from Cloud Tech Gurus. Darren, welcome to the program. Thanks for coming on, bud.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's good to have you on. And I always want to introduce Artie. He's my co-pilot here, and we're doing this together, talking about contact centers and customer experience. Artie, welcome back.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me as a co-host today. Darren, pleasure as always to see you not only again, but also have you on an episode. You are a subject matter expert in the cloud technology space, specifically around AI and contact centers, and you have a whole history and background. So let's start there. So Darren, tell us a little bit about who you are, what your humble upbringings has been, and where you are today, and what you do at Cloud Tech.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to. So prior to 2009, when I got into this industry, I was in commercial real estate. And while I loved commercial real estate, I went over a year without a paycheck. All of my escrows fell through because there was no getting financing in 2008. Every month I had a $25 million property in escrow would fall through. By the end of the year, I had lost both my houses, my car, and was technically homeless. And my laptop died, and my cell phone I couldn't afford, and I was doomed. I was rock bottom. And then a friend of mine invited me to do some sales for him, what was called a hosted call center platform back then, before the Microsoft Cloud commercials.
Yeah.
And I figured, well, I've got nothing going for me, and I don't even feel very good about myself. And this guy's offered me a job. Sure, I'll learn a new industry. And I got into the industry, and I only stayed at that company for a little over a year, but I realized I like this industry. I like the people. I built a good network around it. I want to stay in it. I then moved on to a company called Connect First. It's now the Ring Central Engage Voice platform. But when I was there, it was Connect First, and I helped build them into a brand, the brand big enough that Ring Central would want to buy them, and really enjoyed the industry, the people, and fascinated by customer experience, customer engagement. And what's really fascinating to me is how few companies really seem to really have a commitment to customer engagement and allowing customers to communicate the way they want to, or utilizing technologies that have really already been around for a while to automate, to improve everything for the customer and for the agent, so that everybody has a better experience. But so now, since 2009, for years, I both did sales and became VP of sales at multiple CCaaS providers. And then in 2009, actually, Cloud Tech Gurus, which is our current venture, we've had going for several years. And it was a little side business for us for a while, in that when you're selling CCaaS, you get to a point often with clients where they say, all right, we're going to go with you, but we're not going to sign an agreement until we first figure out what we're going to do for dynamic scripting and workforce management, this and that. So it behooved my partners and I to help them source what they needed. And initially, we didn't make any money on it. Then we thought, hey, let's monetize it. And we started Cloud Tech Gurus, and we actually worked through another master or another sub-agent. And they had a pretty good consultant on the team. So we would match our client with him. We'd even tell him which vendors he should bring in because we were more savvy to the different providers. And we actually, closed a number of deals, and we're making a little money. And then May of last year, I decided, this hobby business of mine has a lot of opportunity. And so we decided I decided to jump into it full time. And then we continued to evolve. At first, what we wanted to do was be technology matchmakers and provide a better way to help companies source technology. And ultimately, I found that frequently I didn't like the vendors or suppliers in other masters' portfolios. I thought they were too old. Technology is evolving so fast that I almost think that all the vendors will be dinosaurs in 5 years, because it's evolving so quickly. And unless you have an ultra modern tech stack, how do you evolve with it? How do you add the new features functionality? So we started looking for vendors that had an ultra modern tech stack that have incorporated the best and the latest advancements in tech. For instance, in CCaaS, if you don't have a platform that's moving toward a federated cloud where you're hosted in Azure, Google, and AWS with an overlay that gets it to act as if it's just in one data center, if you're not moving there, you're going to be a dinosaur. So we want modern tech. We wanted companies that were really customer centric, that believed if we can provide exceptional customer care to enough companies, we'll be successful, versus we just need to make as much money as possible for the next round of funding or to appease shareholders. And you look at the pricing, you talk to the executives, and you get a feel for whether or not the culture is customer centric or not. And with most vendors, it's not. There's very few that we added to our portfolio now. So we started building a portfolio. We were spending 40 hours a week, almost a piece, my partners and I, vetting out technologies, looking for great value proposition, unique differentiators, customer-centric, modern tech stack. And then we got to a point where we had about 30 suppliers, and it occurred to us, hey, we've kind of become a master agency. Let's change the way we think and look at things, and let's go in that direction. And that's what we did. And part of it was looking at how do companies source tech now? And ultimately, there's some issues and problems with how companies source. So whether it be number one, whether it be a Google search or however they do their sourcing, they go out and they look for vendors that provide, for instance, cloud contact center platforms. They reach out to the vendors. They're assigned a salesperson. Each salesperson wants the same repetitive discovery meeting where they're on the phone for an hour with 5 different vendors. And then, the salespeople, that especially the ones that worked under me, there's a pipeline meeting every week where basically there's the fear of God instilled in them that they better close more deals. They then try to pressure their clients to close. And I think that's great for a sales organization, but I think we could agree it's not necessarily great for the end customer getting pressured all the time by salespeople. So we wanted to come up with, and then the other ways companies source, there's the industry analyst reports. What you find running CCaaS companies is that they're all pay to play. If you spend enough money with Gartner, Frost and Sullivan, or any of the others, all of a sudden you're in their version of the magic quadrant. And it's not necessarily the best vendors that are featured. It's just the ones that they had a financial relationship with. And then you have the review sites, and at all the CCASs I work for, marketing gets all the employees and employees' friends to fill out reviews. So I don't know that they're that accurate, or it's something you should really, an company should rely on. And then we determined the best way for anyone to ever source is to hire a consultant who's going to be agnostic, who's going to do one discovery, document the requirements, eliminating all the other discoveries with all the other vendors, who's then going to screen vendors specific to your requirements and find ones that check off all your boxes, and then host and facilitate all the meetings to shelter and protect you from the salespeople and the pressure, and to help you make the best decision for your business and so on. And we decided that was the best way to do it. Ultimately, though, in a lot of cases, consultants, their price tags it can be scary for some companies, but we still determined it was the best way for anyone to source something. So we wanted to come up with a better way to do it for end clients. So we came up with a model where we contract with industry consultants, and we call them Cloud Tech Gurus advisors. And they essentially do all the same things they would do if a client came to them directly. They do a discovery, document requirements. We work with them to screen our suppliers to bring in the ones that are the best match. They host and facilitate the meetings, help with vendor selection, loosely monitor the implementation, and then we remain advocates for the client and the supplier, really. We want that relationship to continue forever. We have too many other solutions categories to ever have to sell a client the same type of solution twice. And but under our model, we compensate the consultants so the clients don't have to. So on one hand, we've built a portfolio with 150 suppliers and 50 solutions categories with the most modern customer-centric vendors on the planet. We think we have the best portfolio on the planet. And then we couple that with well-known, well-respected consultants that act as the advisors, and they do all the same things they would normally do, except we're going to compensate them from what we receive ultimately from the suppliers. So the client's getting all this at no cost to them. So we decided this was a better way to go. And when we present it to clients, it blows their mind. And 9 times out of 10 afterwards, they say that was better than Google searches and all the other things I used to do. What else can you help with? How about HR solutions or this or that? So anyhow, that's kind of what we built and how we determined, how we looked at how people are sourcing and how we came up with what we think is a better way and more effective way to source technology.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I love the model there because I've been on the buying side a bunch of times. I've been a senior director of a contact center, senior director of tech support, all these tool sets that you need to acquire to help support your agents and the business in the day-to-day operations. And it always comes down from, a C-level or SVP of an organization saying, hey, Artie, you're good at technology. Go source, go talk, do an RFP, talk to 10 people in the industry, and then narrow it down to 2, and then we'll choose out of those 2. And like you said, I would have to, go to Gartner Magic Quadrant, talk to people on Forrester, G2 Crowd, Google a whole bunch of stuff, go through the Google responses where literally you type in like contact center as a service, and then you'd have to go to the second page before you'd get to the non-ad space. Like you'd have to go to the second page to get to like the actual stuff that was ranked by clicks versus people paying to be there, paying to play. And then, months, if not years through a process. And then it would always come down to 2 vendors, and I would present to the higher ups and my boss and everyone, here are my 2 providers. Here are the 2 that have won out and have caught our attention after hours and hours and hours of work from me and my team. And it would always come down to the decision maker saying, well, cool, just set up a reference call with someone who already uses that product. And then whoever has the best response or the best customer reference, I'm just going to choose them. And they ignored all the work that was done, ignored all the time and energy, kind of looked at pricing a little bit, but it's going to fit the budget anyways, or we'll make it fit. So I love this advisory organization that you've created, this guru world, because they've gone to the mountain and come back, and they're sharing their best practices. So how do you help your team, your advisors, and your gurus stay on top of what the new emerging technology is? Like, is there training sessions? Is there learning? So tell us a little bit about your internal team and network of people. And how do you keep them, ahead of the game?
That's a great topic. And real quick comment though on what you said when you were having to source tech. The other part is you had a full-time job already. On top of that, you needed to go out and source technology. So doing the research and the vetting and demos and all of these things, super time consuming when you still have a full-time job where somebody is looking at your productivity and criticizing you for it, judging you for it, or whatever. Anyhow, what we want to do is, essentially for consultants out there, and we have a couple different kinds of agents, but for the advisors or consultants, what they want to do is do what they're good at, their core competency, consult with clients around people, processes, and technology. All the other things are necessary evils in their business, having to spend time doing all the research and all the demos, screening vendors. This is all stuff that we do so that they don't have to. We spend 20 plus hours a week vetting out vendors. We're doing research constantly, looking for the latest, greatest for our portfolio. And we do it so they don't have to. And the screening, once they have the documented requirements, we'll do the work to screen the suppliers and bring back to them, here's the 2, 3, 5 that we think are best. And then they'll narrow it down to whatever they want. They'll facilitate the meetings with the client, and it works out really well. And we do weekly trainings. There's usually 3 a week, and where we have different suppliers come on and do a whole training just for our advisors around who they are, what's their unique differentiators, their unique value proposition, how they're customer centric, what's their sweet spot and verticals they do well in, how do we pitch them, and more. So we want to really understand where they're a fit, where they're not a fit, where they are a fit. How do we determine that? And then, what's the best way to make introductions to get them engaged with clients? So we do 3 of those a week. And then in our portal, we even have a on-demand page with all of the different trainings. So it's real easy for people to find them. And then, of course, in the portal, we have collateral and videos and all kinds of fun stuff. So we do all that to make consultants' jobs a lot easier. They can focus on their core competency, and we take a lot of the other things off their plate. So they have more time to do what makes the money and what they like to do.
Yeah, that's great. I love the model. Obviously, we're advisors ourselves, been in the industry for a long time now, and are biased towards that way, right? Like you're saying, the Gartner quadrant for contact center has, say, four of the top players up there, but there are solutions that a client might need that just doesn't fit those four or five that are in that upper right quadrant. And so being able to bring in newer technology where maybe they haven't heard of them because they don't have the $50 million marketing budget that an InContact or Genesis have, right? So it's a great approach. Transitioning a little bit just to the technology side. So when Artie introduced all of us together, it was around contact center a lot. I know there's been a lot of changes with AI, with bots. We've all heard of the big dogs, like I just mentioned with Genesis and Contact, but there's a whole other group of players out there that fit specific niches really well. Talk a little bit about AI and just where you're seeing that evolve in the contact center and some of the new players that are coming along and what they're doing differently than the big dogs that are out there.
Certainly. So, and this is the most exciting time for AI, at least in the time that I've been in this industry, because there's so many exciting AI, RPA, RPO solutions out there. And what's exciting is these are all solutions with just mind-blowing ROIs. And like, for instance, robotic process automation or automation in general, when you're using it, it's something like almost every company could or should be using because it's something that pays for itself and makes everybody's life easier. It's automating manual tasks, process, procedures, data entry, post-call notes. I mean, all of those kinds of things. And so you have these solutions that can do that and that are relatively affordable, but they actually pay for themselves in a short period of time. I've seen RPA solutions with like 2,000 to 3,000% ROIs. I mean, crazy, right? And the AI solutions, very similar. There's AI for voice, whether it be conversational AI or IVA, digital AI, AI assistants, where it basically, AI assistants are especially exciting right now because essentially the good ones, what they'll do is, it'll essentially clone the best agent in any given category, or it could be billing, could be tech support, could be wherever they determine. And it essentially clones all of the best characteristics, in some cases, maybe even their reasoning behind what the best agents do. And it learns all of this and it analyzes hundreds or thousands of hours of interactions. And then once it's live, it's guiding agents through interactions. It's pulling information from disparate systems and presenting it to the agent. It's pulling up knowledge base articles. It's basically like a second brain guiding them through the interaction. And the end result is interactions. I've heard there's some companies where they've dropped their average interaction time by 2 minutes while improving their CX. And then the agent experience is so much better that they enjoy the job. It has an effect on attrition that's pretty nice too. These are solutions that pay for themselves in a pretty short amount of time. It blows my mind that the adoption for them isn't quite what I would suspect it would be. And I think it's just because people are a little hesitant right now with AI because they lump all AI together. Like we have AI that predicts and prevents escalations. And again, another one pays for itself short, mind blowing. But everybody has had a bad experience with what they call AI. We wouldn't call it that. CVS Pharmacy, try to do anything with that. Or any of the ones where you get on a chat, you ask questions, and it really can't answer anything. Anything that isn't super simple. There's no real AI or machine learning. It's more or less workflows with if-then statements and whatever. And we've all had bad experience with it. And a lot of people don't know the difference between really intelligent AI and AI that has machine learning, keeps evolving and improving all the time, and the dumb bots, right? So a lot of times I think they're hesitant to try these various AI solutions that could have the greatest impact they've ever seen on their business operations, efficiencies, agent experience, customer experience, because they're kind of locked into a little bit of a fear about it because of some bad experiences that they've had. And it'll be up to folks like us to get them to open their mind and understand that's not how real AI works. I did a mini survey on AI adoption, and 55% of the folks that respond, or 55% of the people that responded said they haven't adopted AI because they're afraid that if they do, initially the CX will drop. So what they're thinking is, all right, well, we'll work with this company to best we can to figure out what interactions AI can handle and how to set them up, and then hope for the best and cross our fingers that when we set it up live, it's actually gonna work and it won't be too bad and we won't have too many negative responses from it. But the reality is the analytics first goes through hundreds or thousands of hours of interactions and learns everything to the point where we're on day one. It works just like it's supposed to. It analyzes initially what type of interactions should AI handle, and AI is getting so much more advanced now that it can handle trickier and trickier interactions. So like we've got AI partners that the AI can handle 200 sales objections and can, babies crying in the background and noises and accents, don't throw it off a bit. And it can do really complex interactions. But anyhow, you learn about what the AI analytics will determine which interactions it can handle. And then through analyzing enough interactions, it knows how to handle them, well. And so there's not that risk of day one going live and everything kind of goes in a negative way. That isn't really a concern with some of the true AI types of solutions out there. And Artie, you have experience with conversational AI, and I imagine for your former company that was probably pretty scary, but it all worked out pretty well, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's conversational AI with chatbots and voice bots and social bots, which are very customer facing. And I can see a lot of people having fear of implementing those. And is my CSAT my voice of the customer gonna drop? Whatever the NPS. But to your point, Darren, there are other AI tools that can be done in the back end. So it can be true agent assist, supporting agents while they're on calls and on chats. So you still get the agent to customer experience, and all you're doing is enhancing and making that better, which will result in a better CSAT or NPS or voice of the customer. One of the things I wanted to bring up on this topic, and I love how we went down this path because this is really a hot topic for me as well. And I've got a hidden agenda to try to push AI on more organizations, because in the long term, I'm a customer or consumer of the organizations that I also support. I also have car insurance, so I have to use AAA and Mercury and all these other. So I would love to have a better customer experience selfishly. One of the things I wanted to bring up was with AI and automation. Now that we're in this post-pandemic world and we've kind of come out of or are still in the Great Resignation, there's this huge agent shortage where you've got agents who are thinking about the gig economy and doing things outside of just being dedicated to one 9-to-5 job, taking phone calls. So there's a lot of agent churn. It's hard to retain agents. It's also hard to onboard them and keep them engaged because they're now working from home versus in an office where they had a team lead sitting next to them and they could always turn to them for the hard questions and things like that. So everything's moving to this digital world, and technology adoption of things like process automation, robotic process automation, and AI agent assist hasn't really followed suit. It has, but not to the extent of what it needs to be to really support most of the people who are probably listening to this podcast. So where do you think it's going? Do you think there will be some other huge moment in the near future where it'll force us as organizations to have to go to doing more with less, and more automation and more agent assist? Or do you think there's always going to be this hidden barrier where people will always be fearful of automating too much and putting their business processes in the hands of AI. So give us some insight into what your thoughts are of the future and adoption.
Mm-hmm. I kind of liken it to cloud contact center platforms where, when I was first selling that, people would, they looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
And, I had one experience once where a pretty big brand everyone would know. And I reached out to me and I was talking about cloud contact center. And he said, well, we're in a Avaya shop. We have 3 centers and we have all Avaya equipment and we have no interest in moving to the cloud. But within a year, I come back from lunch one day and that same contact center director called. We've decided that our core competency is transportation, not managing expensive contact center systems. And we want to move completely to the cloud.
Yeah.
But it takes time. And I think that with AI assistance and automation and IVA, I think that, we'll get to a point where all of a sudden there's enough companies that have done it, enough case studies. Everyone wants a case study in whatever industry they're in, right? But there'll be enough where, they're doing it. My peers are doing it better and more effectively than we are. We're going to have to really carefully consider this for our business and probably adopt it. So I think we're getting there. I think with at-home agents, I think one of the things that's happening is people worked at home for a year and they don't want to go back to the office. And if the companies are saying, no, well, we're all going to have everyone come back, they say, no, I don't think so. They don't want to do that anymore. Another thing is with minimum wage going up and so on, it's really more cost effective for a business to be virtual. I mean, think of all the buildings and real estate and power costs and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do it just as effectively at home. The problem is when COVID started, people started sending everyone home. They figured out a way to get their agents home. And they did it with duct tape and crazy glue and whatever they could to initially have their agents at home. But now they need to start planning for a long-term strategy for success for at-home agents, which it should include AI and automation, agent assistance. It should include really great agent engagement platforms. For instance, I have a brother that lives in Costa Rica, call center agent for a pretty big BPO. And he says, literally, he feels cut off all day. There's like no communication with peers, managers. If he gets lost on something, it's difficult for him to be able to reach out to anyone, get an answer. I mean, it's hard to believe that happens when there's these amazing agent engagement solutions that not only allow the agent to communicate with their peers on their team and their manager, but also does recognition and gamification and kudos and really brings that whole team spirit that you typically have in the center, looking up at the digital dashboard to see how you're stacking up to your peers, how your team's stacking up to other teams, giving kudos to anyone that does something exceptional. That's what you need to do. Agents need to be engaged. They need gamification or other solutions like that to drive performance, but in a way that they enjoy. But nowadays with AI and RPA, which are kind of blending into one now, the possibilities are that first you're going to learn about what interactions, chat, voice, digital, AI can handle, because the ones it handles better, faster, and cheaper with a higher CX. But beyond that, when an interaction comes to an agent, you have the AI assistant that's pulling information from disparate systems, acting like a second brain, and allowing agents to do a better job on every interaction and shortening that interaction time. But then beyond that, the automation. So at the end of an interaction, what does an agent do? They then go busy, and then they type in their notes. Well, it automatically has been listening to the sentiment and everything and transcribed what's happened, and it automatically puts the notes in for the agent. There's no manual data entry at the end of each interaction. They just move on to the next interaction, which is great. And so ultimately, it really supports a better agent experience, better engagement. I don't think anyone likes doing repetitive tasks with just manual data entry. So anything that can improve efficiency, make it better for the agent, make it better for the customer, less queue time. If you want Sirius Satellite to just ping your radio in your car because it's not working right now, to wait 45 minutes in a queue, which I've done, it seems crazy. when it could have just been an AI that does the whole thing. No queue time. I'm on and off the phone in a minute. Now, I'm sure there's interactions I might have with Sirius that are far more complex and I need an expert, but it's about balance, really. And the tools for at-home agents to ensure that the bandwidth is right, that that they have the right tools, that they have the right engagement, that everything in that you can do workspace monitoring now, where you actually see their workspace, and if you have a clean desk compliance policy, to know that there's no cell phone or pen or paper, to be able to see the agent just like you would if you walked over to their cube. So the technology is there to allow just about any company to perform as well or better with at-home agents than they did in a brick and mortar center. And there's, for example, there's 8 million people or so out of work. There's 10 million open jobs, and there's 50 million gig workers, right?
Yeah.
So what does that tell us? There's not really a shortage. There's a shortage of companies that are open-minded enough to look at what's happening in the gig economy, to recognize that's a direction where people want to go, where they can be independent contractors, they can work at a schedule that fits for them, and they don't have to be driving anyone anywhere like Lyft, Uber, Grubhub, or any of those things. They might already have skills or have been an executive and have expertise in a lot of different areas that they can work in as a gig worker. That's where it's going. And certainly, even whether a gig worker or not, the ability for someone to continue working from home, that's one of the big keys to be able to hire great talent and keep it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to backtrack a little bit on, just cloud adoption, right? And it reminds me a lot of when voice over IP was first coming out, or RingCentral or Vonage, right? Where maybe the bandwidth wasn't there, the jitter, the latency was a big issue. But as that infant grew into a toddler, now into an adult, no one questions, oh yeah, RingCentral, or oh yeah, Vonage or Zoom or whatever it is. It's fine now, but you still have those staunch holdouts on the contact center, right? The Avaya people or the Cisco people that still want to see those blinking lights and those servers going, even though managing an Avaya phone system isn't their core competency, right? It's IT's core competency, maybe for that one employee that manages it all. But as a business, offload it, right? The same way you'd offload to a managed service provider or outsource in that sense, right? But going back to the gig economy, that really interests me, because there is that skills gap and the attrition that happens in a lot of contact centers right now. Where do you see the gig economy playing a role with some of these, say like a larger organization that has a few hundred agents? Are they moving towards bringing people on in this gig economy, or do they have to see them still being W-2 employees? Where do you see that moving?
The way I see it moving, and we have 2 suppliers for gig worker staffing, which is called GigCX nowadays, at least when it's related to contact centers. And what I've learned is, well, first off, these companies are getting like 1,000 applications a week for people that want to be a part of their gig community. And this could literally be anyone. I mean, this isn't really just for contact center agents and customer care.
Sure.
Literally, CEOs can be gig workers, marketing people, and really anyone can do it. Because when you look at people that are working from home, let's look at moms that decided to, quit their jobs and raise their kids. And now they're at a point where, they could work 3 hours on Monday and 4 hours on Tuesday, but they can't get a normal job because it doesn't offer them that flexibility. And maybe they've got a bachelor's degree and 10 years experience in the corporate world and operations, and yet they can't really find a job that works for them. Or let's look at someone in the military, their wife's with them, they're in Germany, for example, right now. Well, it's hard for them to find work. They're living on the base. The base has good bandwidth. They could actually be working as a gig worker in a contact center. And then when their husband or wife gets transferred to another base, no big deal. They can move with it and keep working. And disabled Americans that maybe a traditional job and traditional schedule doesn't work for, but they've got skills and talent, and they're available as gig workers to companies that are open enough to adopt that kind of option for them. And so the way I see it is, in some cases, at least with the partners I have, the end clients are seeing up to 50% savings in talent acquisition, recruiting, and staffing. But more importantly, they're able to find people that they never, really great people with experience, talents, degrees that they would not have been able to acquire. They wouldn't have attracted them in the traditional model that now are available. So the way we have large BPOs that are doing it, and in fact, they get to a point where they have issues. I'll give you an example. So a BPO that wants to handle, let's say, Best Buy, and for the month of December, they need an extra 5,000 agents for a month, right? Mm-hmm. Then after that, most of them are let go. So think about all that goes into finding and the talent acquisition, recruiting, hiring, attrition, all these things that happen, and then they're on for a month and you have to let them go. Yeah. That could easily be gig workers. And without all the costs, these communities are already there and available with an unlimited number of people trying to become gig workers. So literally what they could do, like for instance, BPOs, they'll staff at about 70-80% of what they normally need with their traditional staffing. They'll complement it with gig workers where you can scale, you'll no longer have to worry about sick days or any of these things, because if one gig worker isn't available or has a sick day, there's another one that takes their place. So, you don't have to worry about those things. You didn't have to worry about all that went into qualifying and all of the, you want to look at somebody and do a language proficiency and cognitive, analysis, and are they a good fit for this job? Do they have past history, talent? All of these things, the gig worker staffing companies, they do all that. They bring you qualified people, and they help manage it so that somebody doesn't show up, or hey, you know what, we need right now, there's something going on, we need 30% more agents on Wednesday or next week. No problem. Oh, we need 30% less. No problem. You're only paying for what you use. And traditionally in the gig model, think of Uber, Lyft. When they're driving someone somewhere, they're getting paid. When they're not, they're not. Now, an employee, you're paying them when they're going to the bathroom or sitting at the water cooler, chit-chatting about sports with friends, idle time. You're paying for all of that. With gig workers, you're only paying for utilization. You're paying for the time that they're actually on an interaction. That's mind-blowing, and the savings. And so really for any industry, this is the solution to any staffing shortage that they have. To adopt gig workers into the fold, it will remove any staffing shortages they have now or would have had in the future. It helps with spikes, seasonality, and reduce costs, and gets your talent anywhere in the world in any given language that you might not have been able to attract. It's revolutionary. And again, it'll be like AI or something else where you'll have to beat people over the head with it for 5 years, and then they see enough of their peers doing it. But BPOs and the clients that we've already got engaged in it are going nuts with it. One BPO started in the US, added Germany, added in Philippines, just adding more gig workers in different parts of the world. Or you think about a BPO again, where they need let's say they need estheticians to answer calls for a particular client. Well, do you want to go out and hire a bunch of them and put them in your center, or find gig workers that are estheticians, and you can bring them on, use them for however long you need them, and then there might be other opportunities for them as gig workers. So it's just amazing. It's one of the most exciting things I've seen in 13 years is the whole gig economy and gig workers and GigCX in the contact center space. I think it's going to revolutionize how companies staff.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think that's the next, what we saw in our lifetime was migration to cloud. Now it's supporting of a workforce using technology and tools, supporting of a workforce that wants to work when they want to work, and they don't want to work when they don't want to work, and where they want to work, and on their own terms. So I love how you and your organization, although you're very tech heavy with regards to helping people find technology, you're solving real business contact centers problems, business solutions, process, people, technology, all of it together in one package. And the best thing, and you said it earlier, is there's no sales quota, there's no sales rep pushing down your throat. It's really just, what kind of problem do you want to solve for today? I can go ahead and try to find some sort of solution for you, some sort of partner that does that space, whether it's more headcount, it's connectivity in Brazil, it's the ability to spin up and spin down seasonal workers at the flip of a switch. So it's an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. I know we're running short of time. Alex and I always like to ask one final question. So Alex, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and ask you.
Yeah, go for it, Artie.
Yeah, we're all consumers of products and brands, and oftentimes we have horrible experiences, but we like to highlight the great experiences that we all have. So Darren, putting you on the spot a little bit, but tell us about a time recently that you had a great experience with a company as a customer or as a consumer, and what did they do to wow you? What was that wow moment where you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to be maybe that lifetime user of this brand or this company?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I have really great ones for the opposite, but
we all do too, sadly.
I gotta say, and this is kind of a shame. So when I think about companies that I have my car loan with, banks, anyone I do, but my internet service provider, all the companies that I do business with personally, they haven't caught on to really any of this. Now, sure, there's big brands, and Amazon does a pretty good job. And if you find their phone number, you can get someone on the phone who will help you. It could be a little easier, right? But they do a good job. There's certain companies that are committed to customer care, and like Intuit. Intuit does everything they possibly can to make everything great for their customers, and they get their BPO agents to do the same. It's an experience with them is for anyone. It's just amazing to me. Like, and with one of my banks, I say, hey, I want to get on auto pay. They say, all right, we'll send you a form to fill out. Send me a form. Well, first off, I shouldn't even be talking to you. This whole conversation should be automated. I should be on with voice AI or chat. It should then present to me the document that I can sign with your version of DocuSign, and I don't have to wait for something in the mail and then actually put a stamp on it and mail it back to you. And this should all be like a minute-long process that's automated. And I actually reach out to the companies I do business with. I share what my experience is, and then from my experience in the industry, what they could do to improve.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how infrequently I got the president of the bank sending me a note. Thank you. We're definitely going to want to talk to you and look into some of these things. Nothing. They didn't. I haven't get anyone on call. There's too many companies that haven't adopted what customers want, or ways to make it easier and more pleasant for customers to solve for their business outcomes or personal outcomes. And that's mind-blowing to me. But it's the way it goes. There's companies right now that are going to be dinosaurs because their competition, if they provide a better customer experience, eventually your price and your solution don't matter so much. They'll give up something to have a great experience whenever they need to reach out to you. So that unfortunately, I don't have a great one. I just have lots and lots of ones that blow my mind. They're not adopting
Intuit's good, but
I
think you're absolutely right, because, and a lot of it stems from these companies haven't adopted a customer experience first mindset either, right? They just are still revenue focused, which is obviously important, but they haven't shifted the focus to how do we wow our customers? How do we create an effortless experience? And some of those older institutions, the financial institutions and whatnot, are behind the game. And Artie and I were at a Frost Sullivan event a couple of weeks ago, and the main speaker showed him what, I think it was it not Deloitte, but it was one of the big Deutsche Bank, and what their value was after like 100 years in business. Their values, just call it 50 billion. And then there's these new startups that after 2 years are worth 10x in value compared to the old Deutsche Bank, right? And it just shows you someone's going to come along and disrupt, and you're going to be a dinosaur. But
exactly. One big problem I just see is I wish every company, before all right, we need a call center platform, we need AI, we need this, that. I wish the first step was always, let's bring on a really great consultant to look at our people, processes, tech, look at our gaps, help us really understand what we need, and how to prioritize what we need. So, I mean, there's times where buying that call center platform, whether it's premise or cloud, that really isn't the right move yet because you have too many other problems with people.
Yeah.
Let's understand everything, have a plan of action, let's prioritize it. I wish every company would do that. Not enough do. And so that they're just kind of guessing at what they need and buying things, and there's nothing that's unifying everything as a whole. It's just almost like disparate people,
disparate
and
systems,
buyers in companies,
and disparate people. Well, Darren, man, it was great having you on. Definitely, we could have definitely made this a Joe Rogan podcast and gone on for hours, but we have to let it go at some point. But thanks for coming on. It was great having you. Obviously, we've done a lot of work with you guys and love what you're doing over there at Cloud Tech Gurus. So thanks for jumping on.
Thank you kindly. The pleasure was mine.
Thanks, everyone.
You got it. See you on the next
you.
one. Well, that wraps up the show for today. Thanks for joining. And don't forget to join us next week as we bring another guest in to talk about the trends around cloud contact center and customer experience. Also, you can find us at adleradvisors.com, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week on another Cloud Podcast.